Madam President, I'd like to speak on a separate topic that is timely. Hard to believe it's been less than 2 weeks since the last election. 2 weeks. If it seems longer, it's because you may have been following what's happened since. Already the President-elect, Donald Trump, is selecting his proposed members of his cabinet. Last week, when it came to the Department of Justice, Mark Paoletta, who is overseeing the Trump transition team for the Department of Justice, warned, and I quote, "Career Department of Justice lawyers must be fully committed to implementing President Trump's policies or they should leave or be fired." End of quote. He shamefully slandered these nonpartisan public services as, quote, a deep state, whatever the heck that is. And Cleta Mitchell, an advisor to President-elect Trump, argued that, quote, every lawyer in the voting section and likely the Civil Rights Division needs to be terminated. Of course, the President may set policy directives, but the Department of Justice is not and should never be any president's personal law firm. Civil service servants have an independent duty to uphold the Constitution and the laws of the United States and should never be under pressure to take illegal action. During his first term, then President Trump tried to use the Department of Justice to overturn the 2020 presidential election, as detailed in the Senate Judiciary Committee's Subverting Justice report. Unfortunately, President-elect Trump has already made it clear that in his second term, he will again undermine the rule of law and weaponize the Department of Justice to seek revenge on his perceived enemies. The clearest illustration of Trump's resolve to remake the Justice Department into his personal political law firm is his intent to nominate former Congressman Matt Gaetz to be Attorney General. Let me be clear. Former Congressman Gaetz is the least qualified person and the most radical person ever to be nominated to be Attorney General. While he is a lawyer, he practiced law for only a short time, and his congressional career has been distinguished by his extremism. For example, former Congressman Gaetz has regularly called for eliminating the Justice Department that he's now been nominated to lead. He also wants to abolish the Justice Department's components, most prominently the Federal Bureau of Investigation, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives, if they do not come to heel, his words. Last year, he introduced legislation to eliminate the ATF. Former Congressman Gaetz's main qualification seems to be unquestioning loyalty to Donald Trump. Why do I keep referring to Mr. Gaetz as former Congressman? That's due to the most serious concern about his being entrusted with this new responsibility. While Mr. Gaetz just won re-election and the 118th Congress is still in session, he resigned his seat in the House of Representatives last week. Why? Why would he quit the House at this point if he's just been re-elected? It was an apparent attempt to prevent the House Ethics Committee from releasing a damaging report on his personal alleged misconduct. Mr. Gaetz has been credibly accused of engaging in sexual misconduct with a minor, illicit drug use, sex trafficking, bribery, and obstructing government investigations into his alleged misconduct. And I might remind those listening to this debate, we're talking about Donald Trump's choice to be the Attorney General of the United States of America. These grave public allegations against Mr. Gaetz speak directly to his fitness to serve. Let me add that President-elect Trump announced intent to offer Mr. Gaetz' nomination without even a standard FBI background check that every presidential appointee undergoes is completely unacceptable. Madam President, as chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee for the last 4 years, and a member of that committee for over 20 years, I can tell you that people have been eliminated from consideration for judgeships and other important appointments because they smoked a joint, because they smoked a marijuana cigarette. Eliminated from consideration. They've also been eliminated from consideration if they didn't file the proper tax returns for paying a babysitter or nanny. I've had members' nominees excoriated because of poetry they wrote while they were in college. And now we have the president-elect saying, we're not going to do an FBI background check on a man who could be Attorney General. And we may call for recess appointments so the Senate loses its opportunity for advice and consent. The heartening thing that has occurred in the last few days is a number of Republican senators have stepped up and publicly joined me in calling on the House Ethics Committee to release this report on Mr. Gates so that we can review it if he is truly going to be the nominee of President Trump in this capacity. The Senate has a constitutional duty to provide advice and consent, and it's crucial that we consider all the information necessary. Before considering this nomination, the Senate Judiciary Committee must review this ethics report from the House, from a bipartisan committee, equal numbers of Democrats and Republicans who've released it. Last Thursday, all Democratic members of the Senate Judiciary Committee requested the House Ethics Committee provide these materials to us immediately. There is substantial precedent for the release of these materials in both chambers. The House Ethics Committee released a preliminary report about former Congressman Bill Boner after he left Congress. The preliminary report stated, and I quote, "The general policy against issuing reports is outweighed," the committee said, "by the responsibility of the committee to fully inform the public regarding the status and results of efforts up to date of the Representative Boner's departure from Congress. It is difficult to imagine a more compelling circumstance where there is a need to inform the public of the results of an ethics investigation than when the subject has been nominated to be the nation's top law enforcement officer. It is also deeply troubling that Mr. Gates is not the only example of President-elect Trump's intended nominees who would lead the Department of Justice and inevitably weaponize it to seek vengeance. President-elect Trump also announced last week he intends to nominate Todd Blanche as Deputy Attorney General and John Sauer as Solicitor General, two critically important appointments in the Department of Justice. Mr. Blanche and Mr. Sauer happen to have been two of Donald Trump's personal defense attorneys in the actions taken against him, and they now would be poised to be his attorneys at the Justice Department. Mr. Gates would be a disaster as the next Attorney General. As the chair of the Senate Judiciary Committee, I'm committed to ensuring my colleagues of both parties have every fact at hand to understand his danger. I will do everything in my power to ensure that Donald Trump cannot turn the Department of Justice into his personal law firm, and I'll defend the career public servants who work at that Justice Department and have dedicated their lives to defending the rule of law. President-elect Trump won the election, fair and square, but that doesn't mean he's entitled to choose extreme, unqualified loyalists to fill his cabinet. The Senate must fulfill its constitutional responsibility to advise and consent. Madam President, I yield the floor.